all we need to do now is to put our buttonhole on. I'm making it for a little girl that lives in Virginia, the beautiful Magdalena, and of course that's far away, so I'm going to put in buttonholes. But I have to say, if you don't have to do that because it's for your kid at home, just tuck it behind and pin it to. Try it on and then see where the strap looks best really. And then we're just going to sew it on, and I would suggest that you sew it on with one stitch line right at the top and then one overlapping the stitching line for the tunnel. And that's it right in that point. For me, I'm going to put in the buttonholes just so that Mum has a bit of a chance here to adjust the length of the strap. I made the straps a little bit longer just in case. And so let's get started. We're going to mark 2 buttonholes, and they need to be 3 millimeters or 2 millimeters roughly bigger than your actual button. And we're going to mark them about 1 centimeter off the beginning of your strap, or 1.5 even, and then I'm going to go up that measurement of my button's circumference plus 2 millimeters, and I mark that on both of them, and then I'm going to do a second buttonhole as well. So I'm going to go up another centimeter and then insert another buttonhole. I don't think they necessarily look that great, buttonholes, but it makes sense in this case. I'm using my mechanical machine to put in the buttonhole because actually I have much more power to manipulate my strap. What happens a lot with the electronic machines is that if it has a problem getting over a spot, it will just turn the function off and it will do the bar at the end, and that's it. And you've got this tiny little buttonhole and you go, why is it doing it? And it's just because it cannot cope. So the mechanical machine, I can pull the fabric, I can push it. And that, of course, for something like this is a lot better because don't forget you have the seam allowance in there, both from the flutter sleeve and also from your straps. So it's a double whammy. So it's much thicker on the left-hand side than it is on the right-hand side. And that the electronic machines won't like. So mechanical really rules the roost for me, I have to say. I use this machine a lot. I know it's a bit clunky and the electronic sounds a lot better, and a lot of stuff is better on the electronic machine, but I do find I have more control for basic sewing operations on my mechanical, so I prefer to use that. Now I need to cut open my buttonhole. I just fold it over in half like this, snip with a very sharp scissor through the center, just a tiny little snip, and then I open it out to the ends, both sides obviously. Check that my button goes through. I didn't cut all the way to the end, just in case, and that was fine. So I don't cut literally to the beginning of my bar that goes across. I check it first and leave that off a little bit. So it's minor, but it's just a thing I do. Now we can sew on the button. So I will now arrange it on the back. And that looks good to me. I've put both of my straps on top of each other, going from the front to the back. That gives me the best point for it. And then I go through here and just put my button in. What I didn't think about is that, of course, the buttonhole pulls up, not down. And so I would suggest that you put your button right on that tunnel seam line, and not as I did, sort of halfway in between, because actually it pulls out and you can see a little bit of that buttonhole when I'm done. You want to make sure that you have a little bit of a gap between the button and the fabric so that you get a tiny little stem. So in the end, when you finish, you've gone through about 4 times, what you want to do is wrap the thread around going downwards, and you get this lovely little stem, which is like a little mushroom, we used to call it when I was an apprentice. Just secure your stitching, cut it off, and that's it. Now we want to put the other button in exactly the same position on the other side, and you can see here it pulls up, and I went, oh, I see. Never mind. Take off the strap again and then just measure to the center of your button and measure it on this side as well, and then you know where to go in. And I'm just doing this also the same way as on the other side because I was so desperate to get it in the post, but really I should have done it a little bit lower. So done that side as well, and that's it, top done. I just want to show you what it looks like if it's to the outside, which I also think is really cute. I just used one buttonhole there, and that's for the tilly top. That's also a beautiful top in this kind of look. It's really gorgeous. And you have to just see what you prefer. You could also use cam snaps, of course. Then you can make it very, very simple. Just sew them in and not use a flutter at all. Maybe for something really light for the beach, that is also quite a brilliant idea. Just put a little bit of lace, few buttons down the front, and there you are. The last thing for me to do is to put my beautiful pearl buttons on. And when you put buttons on, and these don't have any function, just put a dot where you want the top one and then the lower one. And then you can take your tape measure. And what I'm doing here is I'm just going halfway and then again half of that. Now I'm going to put my buttons on, and I do that in exactly the same way I just showed you. One little tip here, double thread. You can wrap the thread around, put your thumb on it, pull it through, and voila, you have a knot in the end, which is great for sewing in your buttons. And then we're going to do exactly the same. I'm coming from underneath here. This time we don't need a stem, of course, because it's on the button already. And that's it. Just sew on all your buttons. And one thing to point out is if you're making this for a child under 3, please don't use these little buttons. If they fiddle with them and get them off and then put them in their mouth, that could be life-threatening. So please don't do that. Use these kind of pearly buttons here or any other buttons only for age 3 and above. Use something different for the center. There doesn't need to be any buttons there. And then when I was done, I realized, oopsie daisies, I forgot the lace on the hem. And I want the lace on the hem. You could have put also some embellishment on that insert as well, couldn't you? But I just left it with the lace that I had. Now, if you are like me and you've made a little mistake like that, a little whoopsie, then what you can do is just put it on afterwards. Just make sure that the lace runs out at the side seam so we have no rough edges. I overlocked or serged the edge of my lacing, and then it's not going to go on the back at all. I'm just starting at the side seam where it runs in, and I'm stitching that in a little bit less than foot width, and nobody will know the difference when it's worn. But I did forget this, so not perfect myself. These things happen, but with sewing, luckily you can put most things right, really. Secure your stitching, and that's it. And there we go. Here you can see it's just overlocked on the inside. Not brilliant, but there you are. I've also made the lovely Bonnie skirt as a combo with a Connie top, which you can also get in the shop. Of course, I think that looks really great. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I hope you're back for the next project in this lovely vintage collection. Bye for now.